Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3682. Today's date is uh, today's date is wait, okay, all right. Today's date is November 3rd, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at exactly 7 a.m. Okay, yeah. All right. Should we jump into the question? Let's go. Okay. Now, question is, what if human could sense other intention? Okay, that's a good question. Okay, yeah. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Okay, why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like simply force you to think about that reality. Uh, think about that. I don't know why it's like early morning. I wanted to talk, but it's just like that. Na ki the question is kind of like a something very much big repetitive. Okay, yeah. Like basically where is actually question is actually came from. Well, I kind of like actually make a list of almost like a 200 question of what if. Okay, yeah. And this is the psychology and human behavior related what if questions. Then philosophical and spiritual related of 20 questions. These are kind of like a topic that I don't really love it. Okay, yeah. These are kind of like a topic about what if we could know about other human thought process and things and that, and what if we couldn't lie, what if we always gonna tell truth and this. I don't really love it. Okay, yeah, I like this kind of like assembly question, like uh, I don't know, like something that na fun and usual and mind-blowing question, like basically is this thing, what if food could grant a superpower, or what if time travel let you relive one day forever. That's a kind of like a really spark creates when I ask this question to myself. But right now I'm kind of like asking this kind of like a something psychology and human behavior what if question, which is, yeah, like this type of question I just like love it but not love it. It just, yeah, I don't know, sometimes I just feel like that there is nothing really meant to say. Whatever. Whatever the question is, that it's really essential to have a question, because sometimes when I realize myself, the question is not really that much powerful enough to kind of like assembly explore all my capabilities and stuff like that. But when I try to give the answer and things like that, I went to another zone, and kind of like a way that I explained was kind of like a very much awesome. So kind of like assembly, just whatever the question that it asks, you have to give the answer. All right, yeah. All right. Now, what exactly is this question? This is kind of like a what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interesting way to give the answer. It kind of like force you to think about that reality. Okay. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It is raw. It's unfiltered. It is just my opinion. All right. Now everything's good. Great. Now let's proceed. Now regarding about this question, the question says that, what if human could sense other intentions, or what if kind of like a simply humans could kind of like a simply hear other people thoughts. Yeah, these are kind of like the same questions. Okay, yeah. Like sense of intention, or kind of like a hearing someone thoughts and things like that, which is very much common. For simplified version, I'm gonna say this thing: what if we could hear someone people thoughts, yeah, other people thoughts. Now, what if we could kind of like simply listen other people thoughts? Then what would be that world? Like we became like a Professor Xavier. Okay, yeah. Then what would be that world? Well, basically, is this thing that and in reality we cannot hear someone thought. Okay, yeah. Why? Because we cannot, probably. Why not? Yeah, why we cannot kind of like simply listen our thoughts and things like that, listen someone thoughts and things like that? Well, is because of that ki other person is a other person and me is very different person. Like basically, what kind of like difference between one human and other human? Because completely different person. Okay, yeah, this is the one different person and this is the another different person. Okay, yeah. But why we cannot hear them, their thought process and what exactly they are thinking and stuff like that? Why we cannot? Well, probably is this thing na ki let me give you like some sort of example. Okay, yeah, probably it might gonna resonate, but I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah. So let's just say I have one mobile phone and I have another mobile phone. Can one mobile phone can go into the another mobile phone or kind of like a snoop some sort of files and things and that like a hack the other mobile phone? Can one phone do that thing? Yeah. How? Because of that both the phone are actually connected to some sort of kind of like a something a system, a service system or internet or things like that. Okay, yeah. When multiple phones are connected to the kind of like a some sort of service, that means phone can easily access their data from one phone to another phone. Okay, and that means that one phone can kind of like a simply think like one phone like a basically it's kind of like a simply create a network. Okay, a big network, and in that particular big network which kind of like simply every phone is actually connected to each other and every phone kind of like simply snoop the data from one to another probably. Okay, yeah. So it is really essential to have a build the connection. If there is no internet, if the both the phone is not actually connected with a kind of like a simply single service connection, then probably how does both the phone are actually connected? They are not. Okay, yeah. So both the phone should supposed to be connected with some sort of system, right? Now we are human and we don't really have any kind of like a something a system that we connected. Yeah, we have internet, we use mobile phone to kind of like a somebody this, but there is no kind of like a somebody a service antenna where you are actually connected with other humans and things like that. No. So that's why we cannot kind of like simply hear someone thoughts and things like that. Each individual person is kind of like a very much different than that. Okay, that's why we cannot hear them, and which is also kind of like a very essential for everything. Okay, yeah. Now what if we could kind of like hear someone thoughts and things like that? Then what would be that world? Then probably there are a couple of things are really essential. Okay, yeah. If we cannot if we cannot kind of like a something we cannot like if we can kind of like a something listen someone thought process and things and that, then probably we don't really have a mouth. Probably, yeah. Or maybe we have a mouth but there is no tongue in it. Okay, yeah. Okay, let me give you the context so that you might gonna understand. From thousands of year ago, okay, yeah, we are humans and we kind of like develop the language. Okay, yeah. Now how do we develop the language? Like basically is this thing the language that we are seeing, English, Marathi, Hindi, every language. Okay, yeah. These are language are kind of like a something as are you didn't really learn by like a born and things like that. No, we actually kind of like a build this language. Okay, yeah. So early humans, what kind of like a language they use? Well, they didn't really use any kind of like a language. Okay, yeah. The early humans, I'm talking about kind of like a Homo sapien and things and that and that. In that particular period of time, okay, if I have to kind of like a give you particular kind of like a statistic that you will gonna understand what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. So basically, let's just say communication. Okay, communication. Now, if I'm gonna say, um, what is exactly like, basically, if I'm gonna say there are multiple ways of communication. Okay, multiple ways of communication. What's a communication? A communication means like that you can communicate with other person. Okay, and there are multiple ways to communicate. Okay, now first way to communication is by mouth. Okay, the way that I speak. Okay, and other people would kind of like a hear. Okay, by their ears and things like that. This is called one way of communication. Okay, like this is okay, not one way, this is a kind of like a simply a communication. Okay, there are multiple parts of communication. Okay, now if I'm gonna say, okay, that ki, the way that we communicate really required a mouth. Okay, this is kind of like a simply a communication, like this is the way that we could communicate. Okay, but this is not the only one that we could communicate. Okay, we actually kind of like a communicate through very different forms. Okay, by mouth this is the one form. Okay, by talking this is the one form. Another form is that ki body language. Okay, like sometimes we say no, sometimes we say yes, is because of some sort of body language, and you do that too. Okay, like basically from the body language you can understand what kind of like other person says. Oh yeah, this is the second form of communication language communication. Now third form of communication is a expression. Okay, we also communicate through expressively, like the facial expression. Okay, from the facial expression we can also communicate through. Okay, now there is a kind of like a new generation of communication has actually happened, like a text messaging, stickers, and Morse code, and yeah, blah 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 blah. Okay, now let me give you the statistic. Okay, like how much we could kind of like use communication, how much we kind of like how much, what kind of like a simply form of communication that we use the most. Okay, the verbal communication by talking. Okay, this form of communication is 100 out of only 20%. What? Dude, like not 20%, like basically everyone is actually talking to other, and they are actually kind of like a talking through their mouth. Like basically the way that I'm communicating through you, I'm communicating with my mouth and kind of like a sharing my ideas and things like that. So how does it kind of like us only 20%? It should supposed to be like 80 or 90%, because most of the communication happened through mouth, right? Well, that is wrong. That is completely wrong. Okay, I'm gonna prove it to you. Okay, but let me give you first of all statistic. Oh yeah, so basically is this thing, the mouth communication, the way that we verbal communication is takes 100 out of only 20%. Okay, now our body language. Okay, our body language takes almost like a maybe 40% of communication. The 40% of the communication that we kind of like simply communicate through our body. Okay, it's very confusing. Okay, first of all, I don't really know what is actually the body communication. Okay, and how does I would kind of like communicate through body. I'm gonna give you. Okay, you gonna resonate with it's very much simple. Okay, but you just have to understand first. Okay, 20% through verbally, 40% through kind of like a something by body language. 40 20 60, that means 40% is still remaining. Okay, now the expression. Okay, expression takes almost like a 30%. Okay, means we communicate through each other expression through 30%, and 10% is actually remaining by text messages, Morse code, and the new way of communication. Okay, these are kind of like a 10% in it that. Okay, yeah. Now I'm gonna get kind of like simply give you a kind of like a simply couple of things that you just blow in your mind. Okay, yeah. Verbal communication, that we already knew it. Okay, yeah. The we talk, other people hear, other people talk, we could hear. Okay, yeah. This is called verbal communication. Okay, yeah. This is the form of communication only takes 20%. Okay, yeah. I shouldn't supposed to be explain this thing. How do we supposed to do that thing? And everyone, yeah. Now, kind of like most of people are kind of like somebody really like don't really know what is actually the body communication. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna tell you a body communication. A body communication means like that not just yes or no. Okay, yeah, we kind of like represent yes or no through body expression, but we kind of like express our thoughts through body communication. Okay, yeah. How? Let's just say you are working. Okay, yeah. You are working for almost like 8-9 hour. Okay, yeah. So your body acted very differently. Okay, yeah. You are kind of like somebody stretch your bodies or things or that or something like that. It represents that you are working for a very long period of time. Okay, yeah. Another thing, there are multiple ways a body can communicate through. Okay, yeah. When you are kind of like somebody sitting for almost like 8 and 9 hour for work and things like that, your body kind of like a something express differently, and it kind of like a something a pinpoint that other people can understand. A tiredness. Okay, yeah. Like basically you are being really tired because you are kind of like a something working, right? Same thing happened. Like basically the person who is kind of like a running, he's tired. Okay, yeah. We can understand that this person is really much tired, so we have to give them water. There is no communication happen in between us, but still we knew that this person is actually tired, so we have to give them a water, right? Okay. uh Another thing is that ki uh basically happiness. Okay, yeah. The person who is actually dancing. Okay, yeah. I'm just talking about entire body language na. The person is kind of like a somebody dancing. There are kind of like a somebody two kind of like a somebody emotion can represent. First emotion is that happiness. We actually dance is because of we wanted to express the happiness. One, we because we dance is because of that ki we love to do a dance. Okay, yeah. But almost like a 90% of the people are dance is because of they wanted to show their happiness. Right? Okay. Then basically let's just say aggressive. The walk, different kind of like a walk, kind of like a tends very differently. Okay. In the hospital, doctor can walk very fast. Is because of they kind of like a represent urgency. Okay. Kind of like a something a meditation guru walks slow is because of they have patience. Okay. They represent that particular communication form through kind of like a body language. Okay, yeah. These are kind of like so many multiple body language forms. Okay, yeah. By the way, you also seen those forms in your real life. Okay, yeah, in your life. Okay, you just have to kind of like a look at that, or maybe look around everywhere. Okay, yeah. The person who is kind of like a driving and stuck in traffic, the behavior of that particular man kind of like a change. We understand that what he was kind of like a thinking. Okay, yeah. So basically a body language that we don't know, but yeah, it communicate with us and we understand. Okay, we understand each other regarding about is the person tired, happy, or things or that or that. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that body language is kind of like a something communication happen when the person is literally far away or when there is a person has a kind of like a have a significant amount of distance in between us. Okay, and we understand. Okay, yeah. But when that distance came closer, then there is a new form of communication happened that is called expression. Okay, yeah. and expression is a very kind of like a something different form of communication. Okay, yeah, we could understand each other by way that looking at his face. Is he happy? Is he sad? Is he angry? Like everything. Okay, yeah, you don't really require a kind of like a somebody known about the kind of like a knowledge and things like that. Through his expression, I know what he was kind of like a thinking, somewhat something. Even if that particular person, where is it from, in where in like a basically where is kind of like a come from different part of the planets or things like that. His expression we could understand. Okay, is he angry or is he things like that. Usually this kind of like a somebody communication happen mostly a very close person, specifically boy girl relationship or a kind of like a husband wife relationship, because in husband wife relationship or boy girl relationship most of the communication happen through expression. Okay, yeah, and we kind of like understand from that, we kind of like simply known from that particular communication form. Okay, yeah, you made a kind of like a something a dish and you are kind of like a serving that dish to your wife. Now basically is this thing, when she eat a first bite, you kind of like simply understand did she like or not, even if we could understand that did she fake it or not. Okay, yeah, she kind of like a same only just like say something really emotion that you just quickly get it that she didn't really like the dish that you make it, the way that she make. Okay, yeah, yeah, some people could kind of like a something try to do something very differently like a fake and things like that, but still we could understand that thing. Okay, yeah, expression is a way of communication that we could understand bit more. Okay, yeah, shocking, like basically when the other person is actually shocked, the expression changed, their eyeballs became bigger and things like that. Like basically you cannot believe that what is actually happened or that what is actually that you seeing. Okay, angry, easily represented by emotions. Okay, easily represented by expression. He kind of like a somebody, like basically there is no exact or same kind of like a sort of body structure or exact kind of like a sort of same expression. The everyone kind of like a sort of express their angry very much different way of expression, but we understand that, we understand, we are human, we understand that. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of like different form of communication. Okay, now in early humans, okay, they don't really have any language, they don't really develop any kind of like language like anything at all. Okay, yeah, so basically how does early humans are actually communicate, they actually communicate through this. Okay, yeah, a kind of like a some body language communication and expression through communication. Okay, yeah, and that's why it kind of like a hold a significant amount, like almost like a 60%, 60 to 70% of the communication is kind of like a somebody mainly focus on body language and expression. Okay, yeah, we communicate through that way, but we don't really knew it. Okay, right now if you wanted to kind of like a see it, just kind of like a see it by yourself, you kind of like will understand how much you knew about the way that you communicate. Okay, yeah, the way that you, the kind of like a body communication or kind of like the expression communication. Okay, yeah, okay, so so these are kind of like a built-in communication that we have. Okay, these are, and this is kind of like a built-in communication with every species has. Okay, yeah, like every species they didn't really develop their language and things like that, but they kind of like a communicate through this way, body language communication and expression communication. Okay, yeah, so that's why other species kind of like a talk from that kind of like a language that we might not understand. Okay, yeah, this is kind of like a different form of communication, kind of like a different from every species. A dog and other dog communicate through body language and kind of like a something expression, but still we also understand that ki some of the kind of like a something the communication is kind of like a something very much common. Okay, yeah, we also understand, we also communicate through dog by kind of like a something visual, by body language. Have you ever seen a kind of like a dog is kind of like a somebody taking an kind of like a stretch his body and things like that? When he kind of like a wake up, when the dog is kind of like a wake up, he kind of like a stretch his body. you understand that this dog is kind of like staying for one place for almost like longer period of time and things like that. When when the dog get angrier, the dog face is became kind of like a very much crazy. Okay, like the teeth in kind of like he just, yeah, you understand that like what kind of like a dog is kind of like a thinking right now. Even if the dog is a very different species, you are very different species, but still you kind of like a communicate. You understand that what kind of like a dog is kind of like a sensing. Same thing happened with the cat. The cat is kind of like a poor, like it just like I don't know what kind of like a sound it makes, but we understand that key what the cat is kind of like very much angry or things or that. Also, sometimes cat is kind of like somebody show the expression of love. Okay, yeah, it kind of like somebody, sometimes cat come to you and it kind of like somebody close to you and kind of like rub his skin to your skin. It kind of like a represent she is kind of like somebody fall in love with you and things like that. Or maybe kind of like she wanted something from you, maybe kind of like a food or things like that. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of like a communication that you actually seen and you actually experience this thing. And this is kind of like a very different species. Okay, you are not a cat and cat is not a human, but still you can communicate through this body language communication or this expression communication. Get it? So now you understand there is a different form of communications are exist. All right, yeah. Now these are communication are very pure form. Now what's pure? A pure means like that you cannot fake this. Okay, yeah. If you fall in love or if you kind of like angry or if you anything at all, these are kind of like expressions and body language resonate exactly like the way that you think. Okay, yeah. But the verbal communication is very much different. Verbal communication is completely depends on your tongue. Okay, yeah, your tongue. And your tongue is very much different. Like it acted very different. Means it can fake it too. It can fake it. Means like that, I can lie. I can lie. I cannot lie from expression. I cannot lie from my body language. But I can lie from this tongue. Okay, yeah. So that's why lies actually exist. That's why other people are kind of like lying and things like that. Okay, also, another thing. There is no way that we cannot fake it from expression. Sometimes we could fake it. Like let's just say you are kind of like somebody having sex with a kind of like a girl. Okay, yeah. Now sometimes girls can pretend to be that she is actually getting orgasm, but she didn't really not. She kind of like a represent through emotions or kind of like a represent through a facial structure. Okay, yeah, like she was kind of like a saying, she's kind of like a making noise like oh oh oh. Don't judge me by the way. Okay, yeah, but yeah, she could kind of like a somebody fake it through her kind of like a body language or emotions, body language or expression. Okay, yeah. So basically it's this thing now, but you cannot kind of like somebody lie in that much sense. Oh yeah, yeah, you can lie through body language. Yes, you can lie through expression. Yeah, but not the way that much. Okay, maybe like a basically 100 out of maybe 80% you might kind of like a tell a truth by your body language, but 20% that you could kind of like a lie through body language through. Okay, yeah, and it's not really that much easy. You kind of like a seen it by yourself. Okay, yeah. But your tongue is very much different. Your tongue is kind of like a somebody complete control of yourself. Okay, yeah, complete control of your intention, thoughts, and your brain. Okay, yeah. So that's why you can tell a truth and you can tell a lie. It's completely depend on you. Okay, yeah. So there is no percentage like basically should I say truth or should I say lie. There is no percentage. You can lie, you can tell a truth by communication language. Okay, yeah. Now what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, why the question is actually about that what if we could knew or what if we could kind of like hear someone thoughts and things like that. Okay, yeah, I was kind of like saying this thing, what if we could kind of like simply hearing some sort of thoughts in our mind, then probably is this thing that the communication will not evolve that much. Okay, yeah, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. Okay, since we are born, since we are kind of like a human, are kind of like a being existence, we just only knew two way of communication: expression and body language. We don't know that what kind of like a language should we supposed to be speak. Okay, yeah. So we developed the language. Okay, yeah. We started kind of like a talking and somewhat something other people resonate. Okay, yeah. Why we develop this language is because of that ki our brain is kind of like evolved with the time. Okay, yeah. And since our brain is actually evolved with the time, there are so many way of communication that we cannot express through body language, we cannot express through expression. Okay, yeah. Okay, what is exactly that stuff that we cannot express? Let's just say, like basically the way that I'm talking right now. Okay, yeah. You will not gonna get this information if like you will not gonna get this information by body language or maybe expression. I have to be kind of like a do a dancing and things like that to express entire paragraph. Okay, it's not gonna possible, right? Yeah. No expression, it's not gonna possible to do kind of like a giving kind of like a multiple faces to kind of like a you just guess that what I'm saying. Definitely not. Okay, yeah. So it really required a kind of like a something we are communicating through very much in detail. So that's why we need a kind of like a somebody a different way of communication so that we could talk. Okay, and that's why we build the language. And we build the language, we kind of like talk in that particular language, and we kind of like sharing our thoughts and things and that and that and that. Okay, yeah. Now in this reality, what if we kind of like knew about other people's thought process, or what if we could kind of like develop that thought process that we just know inside their mind, inside our mind, that what is actually other people thinking. Then we don't really require a kind of like a language. We don't really require to develop a language. And if we are not developing the language, then probably entire communication happened through mind. Okay, yeah, things and that and that. Now in this reality, things might be very much different. Okay, yeah, means like that ki when we are trying to communicate through minds, then probably is this thing that ki everyone will gonna tell a truth, no one will gonna lie, everything will gonna kind of like happen so smooth, honesty and things and that and that and that and that. We already knew what kind of like a Professor X can do that thing. We can do that thing too. Okay, we just know everything about stuff and secrecy and things like that. Okay, yeah. So secrecy wasn't even exist. Okay, yeah. If the kind of like American wants to bomb the Japan already knew, or maybe Japan already knew that what kind of like a bomb that he was making and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So chaos will not gonna happen. Disturbance will not gonna happen. The clear form of communication is actually happened because of our mind is actually connected. Whatever he was kind of like saying was kind of like doing and things and that. But is it kind of like somebody responsible for growth? Definitely. It is kind of like somebody responsible for growth because of our mind is actually connected, because of we are kind of like understand what is actually other people thinking and things like that. We could solve so many problems. Okay, yeah. So many stuff and everything. Okay. Then why not we kind of like somebody new, or why not we kind of like read other people's thought process? Why not? Like basically it is responsible for growth and things like that. Well, basically it is not possible. Okay, yeah, because it's if the any kind of like some species could do that thing, it is not possible. Okay, yeah, because basically if I'm gonna say that ki inside our body the information pass through multiple neurons and multiple kind of like assembly, the brain is actually connected to the every organ and things and that and that. How does one part of brain connected to the another different part of brain through neurons, to what, or maybe kind of like a wire, or maybe what? Okay, we need a kind of like a physical connection in between them, and it is not possible to that. By the way, there is a physical connection between the baby and mother. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing that whatever the mother is actually feeling, but the baby can feel that too. Okay, yeah. If the mother is actually happy, the baby will gonna be happy. Baby might not understand what is actually meaning of happy, but he can sense the happy because of the mother and baby are actually connected through this embryonical cord. Embryonical cord, it's very hard to pronounce. Yeah, embryonical cord, I don't know. Okay, yeah, but we actually connected. So basically it's this thing, when one human is actually connected with another human physically, then as a kind of like assembly, we could kind of like assembly understand the emotions. Okay, yeah. A kind of like a baby, whatever he was thinking, as a mother cannot understand, because the baby is not any much thinking, because baby is not even born yet. Okay, yeah. Baby doesn't really develop that much sense of feeling, because baby still is in evolving stage. Okay, yeah. But baby can absorb the information from mother, what she was actually thinking and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. So it is only possible to understand each other thought process when we are physically connected by something. Okay, yeah. A kind of like a something, veins or things, or maybe embryonical cord or things like that, but which is not actually possible. So that's why we cannot kind of like a simply think about other people. We cannot read the other people thought process. Okay, yeah. But it's like basically is this thing, if I'm gonna say I am not exactly convinced with that growth thing. Okay, yeah. Like probably is this thing na ki, if I'm gonna say that ki, if we kind of like really read our mind, read other people's minds and things like that, can we growth? Well, yeah, but that growth is not a kind of like some exact growth. Okay, yeah. Like what exactly growth means, what exactly a development means, what a development means, like that we understand what is actually right and we understand what is actually wrong. Okay, and we find the balance in between them. And when we find the balance, we kind of like simply make sure that bad thing will not gonna happen, we make sure that good thing will gonna happen, and we try to create such a system that kind of like a leads to good thing will gonna happen, bad thing will gonna happen less. Okay, if you still not really understand, okay, yeah. You wake up every single day, you went to office, you went to school, you went to college. Why is because of kind of like a something that key, it is essential. Okay, yeah. Why are you going to the school? Is because of that key, I wanted to educate, right? Yeah. Why are you educate? Because I want a job. Why do you want a job? Because I want money. Why do you want money? Because I wanted to survive the life, and the life is kind of like a depends on money. Okay, yeah, I need to buy home, food, and things like that. So money is really essential. So that's why we are actually connected. So you get it. Okay. So if we want our life is much more better, then what we need? A money. Okay, yeah. Where is this actually money came from? Job. Where is actually job came from? Education. That's why you are going to the school. We build a system that leads to growth, leads to a good thing. Okay, yeah. Why not we hit other, or why not we kind of like somebody do a war with some other country? Well, it's not really good. Why not? Because killing somebody is wrong. Who says that thing? It's a law. Okay, so yeah. So basically we does not kill anybody is because of we have a laws. So basically our system is trying to do less bad thing and do more good thing. Okay, yeah. So we find a particular perfect balance to create that system, and when we create that system will kind of like a leads to growth. Okay, get it? In this particular piece of context, it's really essential to understand what is exactly right and what is actually wrong. Okay, yeah. Killing somebody is wrong. Stealing money is wrong. Helping other is right. Who is exactly thought that? Why do we have this thought process inside our mind? Because what we seen through in our lifetime. We seen through what kind of like a wars can do a damage to the world. But we also seen that what kind of like simply education leads to a growth. Okay, yeah. Because of we actually understand, we kind of like understand each other, we understand our history, we look at the surrounding and things like that. we learn from it and we understand what is actually right and what is actually wrong. And this is somewhat something really essential. Because of that, this right thing and wrong thing will not gonna evolve or will not gonna develop if we are kind of like just reading someone's mind. Because in this particular context, if the people were kind of like a reading other people's mind, then everyone will gonna honesty, everyone will gonna say, everyone will gonna whatever inside their thought process, everyone will gonna know and things like that. So basically, what is actually happened, that we already knew that chaos will gonna happen, so we are trying to prevent that thing. Okay, we are trying to prevent that thing, and which is kind of like somebody responsible for not letting wrong thing to come out. Okay, yeah. Let me give you the context. Okay, our growth does not depend upon the good thing that we do. Our growth depend upon how much bad thing is bad. Okay, yeah. Let's just say the war is a very bad consequences. We knew what could war do. We knew millions of people will gonna die and things like that. These are thought process are actually came when we actually do a war, na? Actually, in World War One, World War Two, millions of people die, and we actually understand that consequences, that war is not meant to be good, is not meant to be right, because no one will gonna win. The winning party and losing party both will gonna lose something in people, in kind of like infrastructure, in everything. So there is no winner in war. So basically is this thing, the bad thing should supposed to be experienced how bad it is. Okay, yeah. And then we kind of like creates the law that it shouldn't supposed to be happen in the future. So that's why we build this kind of like a United Nation to kind of like not make this war happen. We also kind of like try to solve all those issues in diplomatic way, so that through the communication we can solve this thing, because we understand the consequences of what kind of like somebody went wrong if kind of like a war happened or things or that. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that key growth is kind of like something happened not just because of good thing, is also because of bad things too. Okay, yeah, it is really essential to understand the how much bad thing will gonna bad, and how do we supposed to prevent that thing. If we just kind of like read other people thought process and mind and things like that, we will gonna stop the chaos before it happened. And when it happened, then probably there is no chaos happened, there is no wars happened, no one will gonna lie, everything will gonna happen really smooth and things, and that which is not a part of growth. Yeah. So destruction is also a part of growth too. We have to kind of like build the balance in between that, what exactly we are and what is actually existing. Oh my god, it's been almost like a 43 minute. I'm just kind of like talking right now. Okay, I should supposed to be end here. Okay, everything I already explained this thing, by the way. Okay, it's not really that any kind of like a rocket science. Okay, yeah, we already knew what is actually everything. Okay, yeah, but still the question says that what if human could sense other people intention, or what if kind of like a human could read other people's mind and things like that. We would not be a develop. We would kind of like consider as a kind of like an animal and things like that. Yeah, this might be a kind of like a final answer would be. Okay, this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.